in, man. Tommy, thanks for coming on. Where are you? What is the
This is my man cave. It's a barn. It's where my tractor is. I park my cars in here and I have like a little living room, TV, and I don't work here generally. It's more casual.
Yeah.
I just felt this was more casual and so I can
for the podcast? Yeah.
yeah, so and I just got rid of you can't really see it. I'm going to switch it right now. My big truck is there. I had a 71 Ford F100 that I sold last week and I was so
Are
like
you are you are you bent out of shape about it?
I am. It's like losing a child. Not quite as wonderful. But
What engine was in there? Was that there was like a 240 and a 300, right?
what's that?
What engine was in there? What motor?
Oh, I had a 302. It was a
Yeah, the
302 two
302.
barrel with a three on the tree column, which is why I sold it because I'm the only one in my entire orbit that knows how to drive it.
No, literally nobody knows how to drive on the tree.
Exactly.
I have a pretty sweet old car. It was my dad's. We built it together when I was coming up, and it's a 1966 Volkswagen Super Beetle,
Wow.
and she's pretty too. So the cylinders are boarded out.
Yep.
So
How many
it makes
cc's
it
is it now?
uh 1500,
Yeah.
something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, but for a bug, it moves.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's fun. It's two tone. So my dad passed away. I got the car, and so it's got like a nice silver and gray two tone. It's got blue wheels. Like all custom upholstery on the inside. I can't wait to take my kid out and then this thing.
Yeah, please share the photos with me. I told Susan that I want to do a bug or a bus or a thing here because I don't need a lot of equipment because most of the stuff we can do by hand. You can pick up an entire engine by hand, two
Oh yeah,
people, so
especially some of those. Yeah, it's too
yeah.
easy.
So if you see where the black car is parked is I had the cement reinforced for a lift and I had 240 installed up on top. So the plan is to get water running to the back and put a bathroom in that far corner. And then I'll be able to spend more time up here and
Nice.
then get the lift in
Never have
here.
to go to the house.
Exactly. Because it's about 200 yards to the house, and that's just a pain in the neck. The boys are fine with the 5-gallon bucket, but the ladies, no good, you know.
Well, all right. Well, that's like life goals for me is a man barn where I can put my toys. So there we
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Yeah, that took a long time, Matt.
I know it. I know it. We're working on it. We're working
Yeah.
on it.
How's your wife, more importantly than anything?
Wife's doing great. Yeah, family's all good here. She's due in August with baby number two. So we got a little girl coming. So I gotta learn how to be a girl dad, which is more terrifying than being a boy dad in my mind. I don't know if it actually is, but it certainly feels more terrifying.
I have three boys, and my wife, Susan, who she is like, I watch her with her parents, and her dad passed away 10 years ago. However, I watched her with both her parents and I watch her with her mom now. Like she's the daughter everyone wants to have. Like doting, attentive, on point, medical, food, just making sure everything is met and everything is comfortable and gives her space where she needs it, but then gets involved where she needs it. And it's really beautiful to watch. No boy will ever do what Susan does
No.
for her mom. However, on the other side of it is that 14 to 24, 25, like that outer body experience that they have is wild. And I would feel bad for any boy who tried to date my daughter in that range because
Yeah.
it would
Suddenly I'm ready to start cleaning my shotgun on the front porch steps like on a more regular basis. So
yeah. We've never met in person, but how tall are you?
I'm 6'2", almost three.
Oh, so you're good
Yeah.
to go. You're good to go.
Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine who was 6'4", like 280, and he was just a beast. And every boy that his daughter Tiffany brought home, no, you know what he did? He would just pull him in and say, "Come on, you and me, let's get to know each other." And he'd put his arm around his neck, and then just walk him into the next room, and that's all he had to ever do because they felt the presence of this beast, and they knew that if anything was ever sideways, you know.
asserting dominance. I got a couple of good friends that are also military vets from Navy Special Warfare, and I was thinking, I'm probably gonna have them over for beers
Yeah,
when
exactly.
the first date shows up. There's like a team of Navy SEALs and me. We're all sitting there, and we're like, "Hey, man, how's it going? So you're
Yeah.
taking my daughter out? Tell me about that. What are your plans? What time will she be home? I think nine. I
Did you
think
meet their
nine's good.
uncles? Did you meet their
Yeah.
uncles?
Have, have you met them? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So, Tommy, one of the reasons I was pumped to get you on here after many, a few months of going back and forth and making this thing happen was I want to hear about some of the old days stuff, the NYPD. Like, how'd you come up? How'd you get into this business? And then obviously we'll talk about where you're at now, but how'd you get here?
So Matt, for you, I thought about this a lot this morning specifically. I mean, I thought about it for the past couple of weeks. I don't know that there's ever been a better time for an older, more experienced veteran in the public safety space than someone who came up in the 80s and is now probably transitioning, getting ready to transition out and retire and sunset their career. Because what I've seen from, I started in 85, but let's call it
Yeah.
1980.
Yeah.
Anyone, and it's not just me, right? It's anyone in this era from 80 through 2025 is wild, right? It's everything was paper. When I started, it was paper. There were cards, there were paper, there was a computer room.
Reports, all paper, everything.
Everything was paper. Every review I ever did was paper. Every research piece I ever did was paper. And there was a computer room, which you were not allowed to go into, right? And then
Yeah.
the one person who had access, like if they were available, they would let you in and they would do the searches for you and you would surf over their shoulder and that was it. And then
This is NYPD, right? I mean, this is like the
this was
most
New York City
advanced
Transit
PD.
Police, which was the
Okay.
same,
Yeah.
and then the merger in '95. So then I went through the three agencies in New York, then the merger in the Giuliani Bratton era with Comstat and accountability responsibility. Then I went through, the drug wars into that. Then from that into counterterrorism, and then the technology journey. I'm telling you, from 1960, I'm sorry, from 1920 to 1960, the changes in policing were not that big. From 1980 to 2020, the same 40-year period are wild. Like they're not even close. So I think that's like I was born into a very lucky era of being able to watch this transition from old school, which there's a lot of charm to it, old school policing, and they were doing community policing before that was ever even a term. The officer on the beat would walk and know every kid in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And to what we're doing now, which is completely wild with the AI that you guys are doing and the way you can do it. It's so, I feel privileged to have been on the front row seat of all of this. It's so awesome.
When did you get your first like in the cruiser computer in the cruiser? Like when did that happen? Because
Never,
I mean,
I've
I'm
never had
guessing
one.
it was radios, right? And then it
No,
never
yeah, I
happened?
should say, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, no, it never happened? Tell me about it.
Okay, so basically what happens is they used to be called RMPs, Radio Motor Patrol. And in the New York City Transit Police, I got on in 85, 86, doing mostly foot patrols in the subway systems, couple of cars in each district. There were 12 districts in the city. They used to have radios only, no computers in the car, no smartphones, obviously. Everything was through transmissions from the dispatchers.
Right.
Then you have computers back in the station house. I did not personally experience a mobile digital terminal or a mobile computer until 2004 when I went to the cold case squad and one of our cars had a mobile digital terminal. So I would say in mass for the New York City Police Department, and the merger took place in 95. And it took 9 years for me to ever see and sit in a police car that had a computer in it.
That's crazy. I mean, and then you left NYPD just a couple years later, right? So this was
Yeah.
all at the end of your time in uniform.
Yeah, so I had 2 years in the cold case squad. So we would do stakeouts for cold case investigations, an old witness or an old subject that we were looking for. And we would sit and, I would sit in the passenger seat. My detective would sit in the driver's seat and the mobile digital terminal is geared towards the driver. So he's right hand typing. And I'm like, wait, you can find that out here now? We don't have to call anybody? And it was so awesome.
Yeah.
We thought we were like shooting fish in a barrel. It was so easy to find people so fast, you know. But yeah, that was pretty good. And then I retired in 2006, so I only did about 2 years and change in the cold case squad. Not because I didn't want to; I would have stayed there forever. And your plan is always your plan, but sometimes it gets sidetracked. I would be retiring now if my plan worked out,
Yeah.
but
What
it
was the
didn't. I went
plan?
through a divorce. I was financially hurting and I needed to, take my vested pension and transition to a new career to kind of just, I was like running a little bit short every month to paying my bills.
Yeah.
And I was just like, if I do retire and make this transition, I can, breathe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's worth it, right? I mean, we've all been there. So,
It's disappointing on one side, but on the other side, it gave me so many gifts. And like, how many times have somebody had a setback and a setback that you thought it was a setback at the time turned out to be wonderful? 40 years later, I'm looking at 21 years in the police department, 19 years in technology, and I'm blessed. I'm 100% blessed.
yeah. Okay, so you leave NYPD, which I want to hear more about the cold case thing actually, but some of the more interesting ones. I'm sure there's some good stories in there. Yes.
Always, always.
But you leave there and then your first stop is LexisNexis or was it somewhere else?
Yeah, so I went to IACP 2005
Okay.
in Miami, and I didn't even want to go. My buddy was doing a traffic presentation, and
Typical.
his son is now selling to the public safety space. I brought him in as his first sales job in this
Nice.
space, and he's now at Skydio.
Okay.
So,
Doing
but his
drones.
dad and I were best friends. We went through the academy together. We got promoted to sergeant together. We studied for lieutenant together. Our kids played on every sports team together. We coached together. We did everything together. We retired. We got jobs at LexisNexis together. We did everything together. He died on the treadmill at IACP 2012 in San Diego, but that's a different story. But let's go back to 2005. He said to me, "You got to go to IACP with me." And I'm like, I don't even know what IACP is. I have got 19 years on the job in the New York City Police Department. I don't even know what IACP is. And he says, it's the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And I go,
Chief.
I
Yeah.
don't want to hang out with chiefs. I don't like chiefs. I'm a lieutenant. We don't hang out with them. And he goes, no, it's a conference. And it was all tongue in cheek, but
I thought the same thing the first time I heard IACP for what it's worth. I was like, wait a minute, like I'm not a chief. How can I go? And then I realized, oh, this is just like the place for vendors and all this
for
other stuff.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's super valuable, right? And all the breakout sessions and all the things, then like everything across the board is wonderful about IACP. However, at this time I was reluctant to go, but he goes, you really need to come with me. Come on, let's go hang out. I'm like, I'm not interested. He goes, it's in Miami. I go, when are we leaving? It's in Miami. I'd never been to Miami. Let's go. So I was literally on the beach and I go back to my room and there's a message, call him at UB at such and such location. And he's like, listen, Hurricane Katrina's hitting. All the reporters are leaving. There's no PIO or public information track. All the speakers are leaving. Can you pull together a session out of your, what. And I said, yeah, it's going to be crude, but I can do it. And like 7 people showed up for like how to run a homicide investigation and work with the media for the information that you might need to generate leads.
Did
And
you make
so it,
slides or you just
yeah,
riffing
just
live?
completely
Like
riffing live.
nice.
And it worked out pretty well. Like I said, 7 people showed up, which, they probably would have had 100 people show up for the reporter, but,
Yeah.
7 people showed up for me and it was pretty good. And I wind up meeting a reporter from Minneapolis who I had a long-term, long distance relationship with, sharing cases because she did long-term cases and stuff. So we, went back and forth, WCCO in Minneapolis for those listen. And at the end of it, UB said, let's go to the exhibit hall. And I'm like, what is that? And he goes, it's like Toys R Us for cops. And I go, okay, I'm down with that. And we walk into the exhibit hall and it was like this ray of sunshine. It was like the first thing I saw was a helicopter, and then, and all these other crazy things, and then the tech. So I wind up meandering over to the LexisNexis booth. Sizit was just acquired by LexisNexis in 2005. So they were still doing that transition. And I walked over, and in typical New Yorker fashion, I gave an unsolicited, unsworn testimonial and told the chief of detectives of Atlanta, Georgia, and a captain in detectives in CID for LAPD, like, if you don't do this, you're malfeasant. This tool, we're cranking in the cold case squad with this tool, and this was just when public records was really becoming
Yeah.
post 9/11 in 2001. Public records was like on the forefront, and then the slow rate of adoption. And so by 2005, it was like, wait, you're doing it or you're not? Because if you're not doing it, like, what are you
Why?
doing?
Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah. And so that's where we were at that time. And I gave that unsolicited testimonial, and the vice president of sales at the time was a former special agent at FDLE. And he comes walking over to me, and he says to me with his West Virginian accent, "Who the hell are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Tommy
Yeah.
Joyce, New York City
Yeah.
Police Department. Who are you?"
Yeah.
And he
Everybody
goes,
knows me.
he said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I
He
said,
said that. He said, "What do you want to be
just
when you
like
grow
that.
up?" All
Yeah.
right. Do you
And
want
I
to
said,
fight
"I
this
don't
guy,
know."
or do you want to shake his hand at this point?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what he was talking about. I had
Yeah.
no, Matt, I was literally clueless. I had no idea what he was referencing. He goes, "I want to hire you." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I want to hire you." I go, "For what? What could I possibly do for you?"
Yeah.
I was so ignorant. And
This is me coming out of the Navy. It's the same thing where people are like, "Oh, like, well, we could use some additional." I mean, what do you? I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
right. And they're going to
Yeah.
walk you through it, and they'll go, "No, you have something. You just don't know what it is yet." And, and so I said, "All right, let me be clear on this. If I retire, which I'm vested," because he asked me that because he knew to ask that. He goes, "Are you eligible to retire yet?" And I go, "Yeah, I just passed my 20th year." I said, "But I haven't really considered. I don't know what I
Haven't
would
done
do."
anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, "Well, I would hire you, and you would carry a bag as a sales rep. But I think you'd be very valuable to us because you know the product as well as anybody, and you can talk the talk. You have integrity, you have knowledge of it. Just do what you just did, and that's all you have to do." And I said, "Okay, I'll think about it." And I went home, and that was October 2005. So April 2006, I called him up and I go, "I can do this. I can do this," because I was crunching my numbers at home. And then I was trying to socialize what that would mean, leaving the police department, because that's a big part of your life. And
Scary. Yeah.
what's your identity, right? And who are you? And I realized that the job was a part of me, but it's not all of me. And what I think is all of me is caring for the people in the community, because I watched them and I saw them frontline and center, and they deserve to live peaceably no matter where they are in their life. And predator who's infringing on their ability to live peaceably, to me, needs to answer for that. And I'll let the courts sort that out. And I'm not going to judge them. And I'm not going to, I mean, I know some of the reasons and the factors why, but that's not for me to determine. You just, if you're hurting somebody, if you're stealing their property, if you're infringing on their quality of life and their ability to go to work and come home and raise a family,
Feel safe.
I'm kind of in the place of those people. I'm happy to get in front of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so now I can do that from an administrative side, is really how I looked at it. And
Well,
so I
hey, I
said,
mean, and so then you found the right spot. Obviously, you found a company that was mission aligned. They were trying to build stuff to support the guy that you used to be wearing the badge. And I'm guessing you moved up pretty quick
so I did
through
1 year of that.
Lexus.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I did 1 year of that. And then I was being pulled into other territories. And then I had to answer for a number, you know? And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't focus on my number if I'm helping everybody else out. And so they created a role for me in year two. And it was the first LexisNexis business development manager, or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. And then I did that for a couple of years. And then we got so busy that they said, "You need to hire a West Coast version, someone who can, you'll handle the East and
West
someone will
Coast
handle the
Tommy.
West." So West Coast Tommy, Dale Ferranto, may he rest in peace. He just passed away a couple of months ago. Retired out of Cal DOJ as a chief. A hero, Navy veteran. So we could talk more offline. Navy veteran, and got into a shooting where his partner was killed. Long story, wild story for another time. But talk about being fate. Like the final shot that he fired, the next time that they put that gun back into service, like 3 years later, the first test fire at the range, the gun failed. That's wild stuff.
That's wild.
Yes. So Dale
Holy
Ferranto
shit.
was the West Coast Tommy at Lexus, and we had a great time. Then we hired Rick Graham, chief of detectives out of Jacksonville Sheriff's, who worked with Jamie Roush, a former guest of
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah. Jamie's
Yeah,
been on.
we
Yep.
love Jamie.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
so that's how this is a very incestuous business if you haven't figured it out by now.
I feel like I married into an incestual family coming out of, well, DoD, coming out of defense technology world and like the DoD side of things. It's very much the same thing. It's the same
Yep.
investors. It's
Yep.
the same, it's a bunch of veterans starting companies. It's not too dissimilar, to be honest. So I felt welcome. I knew all my second cousins when I showed up within a month or two. So,
Yeah, for
well, yeah, that's
sure.
how you and I met. I mean, we were riffing, I think through Sean Bear and then eventually,
And then Seamus.
and then Seamus, yep,
Yep.
at NYPD or
Yep.
formerly through NYPD. And then, yeah, then I think I just called you up out of the blue and said, "Hey, Tommy, my name's Matt. I'm building this company. What do you think, man?"
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, because I know you've probably asked a million questions to a million people, but our conversation revolved around sieges. That was the
Yep.
first. Yep.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
no, I do remember because it was a pain in my ass to try to figure it out because there's no good like resource online. Like the FBI's website is dog crap. Um, the like there's a bunch of guys that want to charge you a bunch of money to be CJIS compliant, and then you realize that there's no compliance. It's actually on the agency themselves to do the audit. And then it turned out that data we were handling wasn't even CJIS data, but we wanted to be extra careful, and it actually was more important to be SOC 2 compliant than all these other things. Yeah, I was after talking to you, I think I spent 6 months chasing my tail before it was helpful, and then I eventually got around and figured it out. But
Yeah, yeah, I don't know that anyone's got it figured out yet.
it's HIPAA. It's HIPAA light. It's not as bad as HIPAA, but it's
Sure.
pretty freaking bad.
Yep. And then it changes, and then, and then you got 50 states, right? And 50 states look at
Yeah,
it differently and they attack it
yeah,
differently. So now I mean, we just look at it like, who's the most strict and who's got the toughest battle, and just that's
yeah.
our.
Let's build it. Let's build it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But
what
anyway,
should?
going back to that transition to that business development role and expanded it because we were growing so fast and with great solutions and great tools, that the demand created, an opportunity for me to lead a team of two. And then from there, I moved into a strategic role for market planning, and had all of law enforcement's market planning. And then so that gave me 6 years at Vigilant, 3 years of sales. I'm sorry, 2 years of sales, 2 years of business development, and then building out a business development team, and then 2 years of market planning strategy. How to design ideation for products, then how do we get them into the build mode, then how do we go to market with all of those things, how do we price them, all the really cool stuff. For a planner, I would rather be out in the field, but it was great experience for me.
That's diplomatic of you.
Well, you know what? I look at myself as a knuckle dragging cop, and I breathe through my mouth. So
Yeah,
for me to
yeah.
have gotten my MBA through actual practical experience versus going to a institution was kind of fun. I told everyone I got my MBA by reading the Harvard Business Review.
Hey, I mean, you can do worse. I'll say it a million times. It's like super cliche at this point, but I feel like, I did a fancy MBA at MIT, and I feel like I learned way more in like 2 weeks of running Multitude than I ever did in the entire 3-year program, between MIT and Harvard. So, yeah, I believe it.
That is fascinating that you said that, because I was once in a very uncomfortable meeting with I after I transitioned from Lexus to Vigilant Video, which became Vigilant Solutions, my CEO and I and a marketing person was sitting in the room, and my CEO, who was a scientist and a great mathematician,
Big brain.
another naval officer, again,
We're
nuclear
everywhere.
probabilities. Yeah, you're everywhere. Anything that's meaningful anyway, right, Matt?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
He said, I don't know why anyone would ever go for an MBA. Just come here and learn it real because this is where it's really happening. And then I'll give you the other side of that. Rodney Dangerfield in Back to School said the same exact thing in a complete mockery of a comedy. And he said the
Right.
same exact thing. So
Yeah. I should have listened to both of them. No, it was good. I mean, okay, it was good in this regard, which is like I didn't have the vocabulary to even know what the hell I
yes.
wanted to do.
Yep.
And coming out of the military, I was good at leading large groups of men and women. I was good at system and process, and I was good at like understanding chain of command, where I sat in it, taking strategy and turning it into tactics. What I wasn't good at is knowing what venture capital is, what a private equity firm does, what leverage means, and how to use it to successfully run a business, like how a line of credit could be used to float finances, like those type of like ethereal concepts. Now, I could have gone to investment banking and like figured some of that. One, I don't want to live in New York, and two, I am terrible at Excel. But like, it gave me some fluency to at least like enter the right conversations, and then like from there, if you're a naturally curious person and you have work to do, you learn the skills in pursuit of the work that you need to do, which is what you did.
Yep. No, everything you said makes complete sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be nice to have that background so that you know what they're talking about when they're talking about, and you don't have to, at the time, Google search it. Now, whatever
Yeah,
AI tool you're
Chat
using,
GPT it
yeah,
now.
ChatGPT, Claude,
I do
Grok,
that all the
whatever,
time.
whatever's
Yeah.
the latest and greatest. But
What's your go-to? What's
I
your
do all
go-to
three,
AI?
Claude, Grok, and Chat. For full disclosure, I use them. They're never 100% right, and I have to fine tune and tweak the content that comes out to make sure it's accurate as I know it, which is exactly like we used to use the marketing people and the interns and stuff. So I would say my work is exactly the same, except it's much faster now. Instead of a week to turn around something, I can do it in a day.
Yep. I think that's a good way to frame AI writ large right now is it's augmenting. It doesn't like it's not like we've replaced Tommy with AI. It's actually that Tommy has replaced an assistant with AI 80% of the way. Like that, it's almost like that. Like I use it, I mean, I'll use it for everything from like, hey, I got all this stuff coming up. Could you help me prioritize? I'll put it in voice mode, go for a walk with my dog, and just like riff. And this thing, like, it's like having an EA and a therapist in one. And you could be like, all right, let me like riff through what boom, boom, boom. And then I come back with a plan. And I was like, great, can you put that in an email and send it to me? And I like show up and it's like good to go. You know what I mean?
100%. Although I'm not as advanced as that. I mean, the walk and talk is a whole nother story. And since we both share golden retrievers, by the
There we
way,
go.
that's a
There we go.
new that's a new plan. That's
Yeah. Walk and talk, take the dogs, you go out, you put ChatGPT in voice mode, pick the voice that's least annoying. Like, I don't know. They still have the one that's Scarlett Johansson. I don't know if they got sued over
I
that.
can sign up for that.
Yeah, but you could talk to
Edit
her.
that part out so Susan
Yeah.
doesn't see that.
Yeah. Sorry, Susan. Yeah, we're keeping that. But you do the walk and talk and you just riff through and you say, hey, act as a venture capitalist. Let me give you my pitch. Act as a blank, blah, 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 blah. And then give me a feedback. And I love it. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
very cool. No, it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, like I said, so an engineer told me, and it would be interesting to hear your perspective on this. He told me a couple of years ago when this was first coming out, and he said the first thing that's fascinating is that software engineers are actually writing this AI code that's going to replace them more than anything else. The second thing that was really interesting, he goes, look, I can do one of two things. I have 100 engineers assigned to me. I can now reduce my staff to 10, or I can keep the 100 and then like blow it out and be so much more prolific and create so much more so much faster. So which one do you want to do? Exactly.
I can just run faster. So for the cost of 100 engineers, I now can have 10 AIs powering the other 100 engineers I have, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like this is the classic like Luddite conversation you have with people, which is like, well, this tech is gonna like destroy value and like we're destroying all these white collar jobs. Some of that will happen. That is true. Some of that will happen. But it also will free up those working to do more and create opportunities that previously were too expensive, too time consuming, too difficult. Like with these new research modes, like ChatGPT has the like deep research mode, Gemini has the same thing. You put it into deep research mode, you ask it like a well-framed prompt question, and it'll go off and think for 10 minutes, right? 20 minutes, 30 minutes even on some things, and come back and like give you a presentation that's like as good as like a level two management consulting firm. Like maybe it's not like top tier McKinsey, Bain, BCG, but it's like right up there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, that was $100,000 product. Like, yeah, I just did it. So now I can make a decision and move and keep going. And like that's some next level stuff, man.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah, I think we see it the same way, and I'm glad to hear you say it because you're confirming a bit again, being not as sophisticated on the business and technical side as you are. I'm more of on the talking to the end customers and just bringing values and value propositions to their conversation and how they deploy and then how they make sure it's working. As I teeter over that other side into the business, it's good to have you hear you say that stuff.
yeah. So
Yeah, so then I transitioned to Vigilant Solutions in the LPR space.
I know you spent a while in there, but why don't we fast forward a little bit? What's going on now in the world for you on the professional side, and then a little bit of like also like what are you seeing in the tech space that's getting you pumped, getting you excited? Like what's going on now that you're at this point in your career?
Yeah, so I went back to Lexus after, I give some frame it up a little bit. I went to a tech startup on the LPR side in 2012, and we exited at Motorola in 2019. I stayed until 2020. I tried a little startup. I thought I could bring something to the table there to get them going and massive growth and expansion. But what I learned was I don't care how good the tech is, the people got to get along, people got to agree, the people got to be aligned on the mission. And if they're not, I thought I had a seat at the big table. And at the end of the day, there was only the tip of the spear. And if that wasn't going to happen, it wasn't going to happen. So, and I've had
Team
two
fit,
hiatus. I'm sorry.
team fit. Gotta have team fit. It's like the number
Culture
one thing.
eats strategy for breakfast every day, Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
Yep. So everyone's got to be aligned. Everyone's got to like each other, respect each other. Maybe not like each other. That's okay. But at least respect the work that's coming out of each other for sure. And then I had a hiatus and I landed back at LexisNexis because the company that I left, although I didn't leave per se, I went to something and my CEO at the time always, I guess maybe he knew there was a chance that I was going to leave because he always said to me, I don't want you to leave. I just want, if you do leave, I want you to go to something.
Don't
And
just
so,
walk.
and I did go do something. And so when I came back here, LexisNexis is a very different company than it was that I left. They can do a lot more. They have a lot more flexibility. They've done some acquisitions. They've expanded. They have a lot more control over their engineering efforts. So my intent when I landed here and 18 months in is to move the needle in that space. And I'm always I'm at the end of the day, the data, there was someone said this the other day, data is gold or data is it's what you do with the data and how it renders itself because just volumes of data now is no longer we used to
Yeah.
skip through it but now you want to deliver it right so we have the data. Lexus has got you know all the public records plus now their PS deck. So it's exciting and fun to build this all out and the add-on features. So that's what I'm working on now. To answer the question and what this race is going to look like in the industry is wild and it's fun and it's exciting. And I'm a big fan of competition. If you don't have innovation, if you don't have competition, you don't have innovation
Yeah.
because you're going to get
Yeah.
stale and stodgy. So
No. Yeah.
for me to sit here and say, I work for this company and boy, I hope no one really challenges us and we just want to dominate the market. That's what I feel like I want to do, except I know everybody loses in that scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. You win for a short period of time, but you don't actually win.
So that being said, what's going on right now is coming back from my ACP Tech. Sorry we didn't get a chance to catch up
I
there.
know. I know.
But that's okay. I mean, things are. It was very exciting to see new stuff like an AI call taking service where it's all non-emergency. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to name because I don't want to say I'm endorsing or not endorsing. I'm going to talk more in general of capability versus
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
vendor.
What are that's kind of what I wanted to know anyways, is like, what's the tech of the future, the capability stack that is exciting?
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. And the rep on the booth was willing to give me a demo, which I thought was a very good demo of call taking with AI. It was a chatbot the whole way, but it was very realistic. I mean,
Yeah.
I've
It's
gotten all,
verbal.
yes,
Yeah.
it was very good. However, I said, I really need to hear the slang. I need to hear the word. Like, that's not a real world call that you just presented to me.
Yeah. It's scripted.
Yeah. And I was like, so, and I use this term, which is very popular in New York City, but like, oh, there's a dispute in front of, well, dispute's not a good one because that might suggest an emergency, but like, there's an abundance of garbage in front of the China Rican in Myrtle Avenue in Bushwick. Can you
Yeah.
figure out what that means? Well, what is a China Rican? And a China Rican is a Chinese and Spanish, Puerto Rican restaurant, which are very popular in New
People
York
say
City.
this. People
Yeah,
say
exactly.
China Rican.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And his system
I
didn't
feel like
recognize.
I'm not allowed to say that word, but it
Well,
sounds
no,
okay.
I
Good. Yeah.
mean, I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, no. Yeah. If it's a
That's what they're
thing and
called
it's like,
universally.
that's how a call is going to come in, so you have to be able to handle it.
Exactly. And so it's that kind of stuff. But what the interesting part of that conversation was, it won't take long to learn that once that starts becoming popular. And so the first time they say it, it's actually going to put it into the database in the queue, and then the system can learn it. So that was really
Comes back out
interesting.
and says, "Hey, we don't know what this one is. Can somebody tell us?" And then
Yeah, exactly.
go from
So
there.
that was interesting. I always feel no matter what technology we're talking about, though, Matt, policing is too important to ever use the human in the loop. And we've heard that term human in the loop over and over and over again. And that's good for a lot of technologies where they are now. I don't care how far advanced we are in the future. It always feels to me that we always need, at least in my lifetime, we need to keep the human in the loop because policing is too important and too serious to ever rely on a machine to make a decision.
Is it lip service? Like, we talk about human in the loop a lot. It's a thing I believe deeply in, mostly because of the like weaponeering background I have in the military, and like we thought a lot about like human machine teaming in regards to kill chain. But when you start to think about like administration of justice, some of these companies I see them doing it, I think they talk about human in the loop just as window dressing to like keep city council happy. I mean, what's your read? Are you similarly uh jaded like me, or you actually think people care about this?
No, I am like you. Uh, and I won't lie. I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this and the large followings that we have. I hope more people watch this than not. I won't lie. I've gotten in a lot of hard discussions over saying what needs to be heard versus what they want to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
And if any company that I worked for said, no, we'll keep the human in the loop. And if they weren't really doing that, or if they were not saying what I believe, and I could be wrong, but if they're not saying the things I believe to be true, boots on the ground for the cop, boots on the ground for the community, I'm going to say those things. And I don't take those things lightly.
Yeah. I
So,
think a lot of officers are the same way.
yeah. And can't you just go with the flow? Can't you, like, come on, what are you doing? I'm telling what I believe to be true. That's all.
Well, it doesn't happen. There's no it won't be a Tommy Joyce, we have this big problem for you to solve, and we need you to decide if we can take the human out of the loop. Like right now, yes or no, can you do it? Like that's not how it will be presented to chiefs across the country and technology decision makers. It will just happen one day, and it will be a, did you read the report? We mentioned in our terms of use that we're no longer using human support agents, blah, blah, blah. It's like a subtle seeping in. And there are functions inside of a police agency where that's probably perfectly acceptable. But I think one of the things that I feel like from I've been having these type of conversations on the pod, plenty of conversations in my Multitude Insights work, but places where I feel like the tech leaders of today and the kind of the folks coming up are not well prepared to understand. how to like read agreements for that type of stuff. The city council, the legal, those folks aren't really geared up on AI yet. And so I feel like there's a big gap between the vendors and the customers in terms of like savviness and technology. And like, so that's one of the things we always try to do is like be very clear about our terms and try to serve as a model vendor, if that's without like tooting our own horn too much. Like, here's how this should be done. And I tell people like, hey, if you're talking to other vendors and they aren't asking you these questions, like there's problems. But I just feel like it's a big gap, that other that the decision makers aren't necessarily prepared to handle. I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah,
talk
so
down to some of those folks, but that's one of my feelings.
no, that's right. And I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am, is the technology is so much more advanced than the policy and the best
Yes.
practices to keep up with. And therefore, a company like yourselves or Lexus or any of we definitely got to talk about the big ones today because there was a big
Yeah.
thing in the market, which I'm very close to with the LPR space. But everyone's moving at such a rapid pace, and it's never, for at least for as long as I've been involved in the tech side, we've never kept up with the policies, procedures, and best practices that keep up with the technology. So they're always playing catch up, and the lawyers are scrambling, and the chiefs are scrambling. And what do I need to learn? I mean, we have a chief that we've talked to in the market, not necessarily a LexisNexis customer, but I talked to on the sidebar, and he told me, he's like, I'm just so afraid of AI, I'm not touching it. And I was like, oh my gosh, we had this conversation with a chief 12 years ago when he said, I don't know what's going on in the LPR space, so I'm just not touching it. And I'd rather just put my head in the sand than I'll wait for the chips to fall where they may. And I think that's not a great place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even. Let's talk about the big three, as you put it. Who's
Well, it's
frame
not
it
my
up?
big
Frame it
three.
up.
That's what
Frame
everyone's
it up.
talking. That's what everyone's talking about right now, right? So I
Frame it
think
up for us, though. What's going on?
Yeah, I think, reading the room, and when I say the room, I mean that was the IACP tech floor and the virtual space that everything. LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool for anyone who think, oh, well, I don't do LinkedIn or I'm not
Yeah, there's
on
a lot of cops that
social.
don't do it.
Yeah. I think you're missing an opportunity. I've met great friends and met great intel, competitive intel. I mean, it's just super valuable, super
Yep,
valuable.
you're big on LinkedIn. You're always
Well,
putting good stuff out. You're
it's
always putting the good
relative.
stuff.
We could talk about LinkedIn and social media. I think it's a really good topic. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that Motorola, Axon, and Flock are pretty much the main topics of conversation right now. Axon, and this is why this was important. This is how it stimulated this particular podcast today, is the LPR announcement going to market by Axon.
Yeah,
And for me,
specifically targeting Flock, right? I mean,
that's what they're saying. I don't know. I'm not in the room with the two CEOs. We can read what we read in public, but I'm also from the person who ran a homicide investigation that was sensationalized in the New York City media, and I was like, they don't have it right at all. That's not what's going on in the real investigation. So I don't know what's going on there, but what my concern is for the market, and again, trickling down ultimately to the community, is I want vendors who are responsive to the law enforcement agencies to keep their officers safe, because if their officers aren't safe, then the community can't be safe. They need to work efficiently and productively as they possibly can, because the earlier you identify somebody, the earlier you apprehend them, those are crimes not committed. So those are the non-starters. Like if you're not doing those things, like don't even go into the market with a product, right? You have to make them work efficiently, you have to make them be more productive, and you have to give them tools to make them safer in that effort. So that being said, when you start saying, well, I'm not going to work with this vendor or that vendor, and we're not integrating here, I think those days are past. They got away with that 20 years ago. We don't play with them. We don't play with them. Well, we don't integrate with them. I think an agency needs to be allowed to say, no matter what I use, no matter what platforms I choose, I may do one throat to choke, and I'm going to buy everything this one vendor. However, I might parse out this capability, this capability, this capability. And I expect you, Matt White, to work with my other platforms and my other vendors. How does that work?
yeah, and I think modern technology companies like Multitude, shout out, do that,
Yeah,
right?
cool.
Like they say yes by default, like kind of default default answer is I have an API. You can hit my API and we're good to go. When you talk to the old guys, though, it's not that way.
What I've seen is they say, yeah, we do it, which is a true statement, except we're going to make it really hard to do.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt, dude.
It's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to be expensive.
Yeah, you're not gonna like this one bit, but we support that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's unfortunate. And I don't want to see that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So of those guys, so like LPR, to me, LPR is going to become like it's one piece of technology in the stack, though, right? Like at a certain point, LPR is everywhere, or is it? I mean, you've been in this industry for a while. Like, is it just become a commodity and it's just a thing? Every agency has it. It's just a known piece, or is it still good business? Like, where do you think?
So I think from an LPR perspective, and then let's identify what you mean by commodity. Like gold is a commodity. Gold is gold no matter who you get it from. I would say
Yeah,
no.
and yeah, it more meaning like the ubiquity of it. You can get it from anywhere. The sensors are good enough from any vendor. Um, maybe there's some slight differences into which software ecosystem you're plugged into, but at the end of the day, like you can't charge a lot more because they can always go somewhere else and get it.
So that's a race to the bottom, and you don't want to do that. So I would say, as of right now, no, I think there still are differences between the LPR providers in terms of a front end camera and a sensor and the back end data analytics and the user experience that they have, right? So, level setting again for the audience. When I went to Vigilant in 2012, they were the first LPR vendor to go into the cloud. And they were the first LPR vendor to say, no, there's a lot more value in the data on the back end than just the hit in the car or the hit
Right.
in real time. So
Yeah.
that being said, I'm proud to say that I was part of a team that looked forward on that space. On a side note, at the time, so 2012, I'm not talking about Flock, I'm not talking about Motorola, which is now a Vigilant asset. Vigilance a Motorola asset. Uh, at the time, it was Pips, it was LSEG, which is now a Leonardo. There was a couple of other smaller vendors, give or take. We all got together in 2012 and we got together and we said, hey, listen, there's a lot of negative legislation coming out against usage of LPR in the public safety domain. Let's put up a Chinese wall. Let's collaborate on defeating this legislation that is destructive to the industry and will remove LPR as we know it for public safety. And I will say here today, and I challenge anybody in the country who ever sees this podcast to tell me that I'm not telling the truth right now. Every single vendor said, no, we'll let it be. Whatever happens, happens. And Vigilant was the only company that contracted with a lobbying firm and went
Yeah.
out on the trail and said, Mr. Congressman, Miss Congressman, Senator, Congresswoman, Senator, Oversight Committee, Judicial Committee, whatever committee on the Hill said this legislation is bad and destructive for public safety. Let's rewrite it so that we're all in agreement. We're not saying eliminate the entire restrictions on what you're comfortable with, but what you're proposing in your state right now is devastating. And it's if it was not for the lobbying firm, and they know who they are, and if I can drop their name, I would. Is that okay?
Totally. Up to you.
BBM, Brooks Bowden Moore, Ron Brooks,
Uh-huh.
former Cal DOJ chief and National Fusion Center, NICRIC director of the NICRIC in Northern California, him, Ben Bowden, and Chris Moore, former chief of San Jose. And then Ben Bowden is just a great guy. Ben Bowden and I spent a lot of time together on this. That's how I know it. This is not what I heard. This is what I lived personally. And it was Ben Bowden, Ron Brooks, and Chris Moore that brought me to the Hill to educate our legislators. And I will tell you, the Democrats, there you go. There's their business card. Shout out BBM.
I was
BBM.
just in conversation with some of these guys, so
Yes.
there you go.
Their Ray Gadetti recently did a LinkedIn post calling Ron Brooks a giant in law enforcement. I would have to concur. So that being said,
You
it
can
was
tag him
their
in the
effort.
release.
I'm sorry.
You can tag him in the release of the episode.
Okay, I will. Um, they set the groundwork for Vigilant to educate our legislators on what LPR really was and really wasn't. But not for their efforts, I don't know that LPR, Axon Flock, I don't think Flock would even exist. And that's not to say they didn't have great leadership and they don't have great technology. I think they would have just completely legislated this technology out of business. So I had a conversation with an executive C-suiter at Flock, and I told him that. And I don't know if he believed me or not. It's the truth and it's the reality. And that's the fascinating thing. And facial recognition is kind of going through it again right now, similar to LPR, but not nearly as intense. And there'll be something else later.
Yeah, it's I don't think people realize how much LPR is actually out there. Like I talk to people that aren't in the industry at all, of course, and my wife and friends, things like that. Nobody has any idea that it's kind of everywhere now at this point, right?
There's there's a lot of cameras. I heard an agency say to me the other day they had so yeah we have 600 cameras or something. I was like, what? That's like that's fantastic. That's
Five
really good.
square miles,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
it's pretty crazy. So what everyone needs to know is that there have been higher court decisions on LPR. I believe there's 9 right now that are significant that all deem LPR constitutional, and they all say, but what has not been challenged yet is the aggregate of the data and what that means and what insights that provides to a pattern of life. I used to say, and I still feel strongly about it, is that these are small points in time and you could say, well, this, you can track a subject. Well, first of all, you're only tracking a car. You have no idea who's driving that car. So, as an example, my wife and myself, we have 2 vehicles. We interchange our cars all the time.
That first of all, we don't do that much in my house, so we should talk about that. But second of all, yeah, it totally makes sense from an investigation perspective.
Yeah. Um, so I once went, I think you'll find this fascinating. The chief of staff of the oversight committee chair at the time, I'm not going to say any names, said to me when we walked in, I don't care what you have to say. And I was like, we didn't even get into it yet. And he said,
Yeah,
I don't
nice to
care.
see you.
Yep. And then he said, but I'll humor you guys. Go ahead, do your presentation. And I put a dot on a map that was an LPR read. And I showed all the metadata for that LPR read. And I said, as a former detective commander and a former detective sergeant and a former detective, and I think I know a little bit about the criminal investigative process and I know a little bit about this technology. There's not a detective in this country that can put a butt in the seat of that car. And you know what he said? I don't care. That's the truth. Every other person that I ever met on the Hill was an absolute lady or gentleman. They were very open minded. They were very thoughtful. They were very caring. They were very interested in absorbing information. That one person at that one time in that one meeting of all the times BBM brought me to the Hill, that one person said, I don't care what you have to say. I've already made up my mind. Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
I love the world. We've engaged with lobbying firms. I had lobbyists on recently, and we'll probably do some more. People have been really interested in like what legislative engagement looks like. But it can be so valuable for a small business, even small business, to go and like have a relationship with somebody that knows how to work that. Because I have found the same thing is that despite the media temperature, like most of the people up there are willing to talk to you and listen to what you're doing, and they want to improve things. So it's not all terrible.
So I agree. Everyone, and I met all the heavy hitters. Everyone you see on the news, whatever channel you go to every day, I met everyone. I met all the ones we met. Oh, I didn't meet all of them, but all the
Yeah,
heavy
I got
hitters,
you.
all
I
the
got
big
you.
names. They were all wonderful. And then it would basically be a 10 or 15-minute meeting. And then they would hand us off to staffers. And then we would do the deeper dive. And the staffers were all eager, young, people looking to get into that world. And they were all super smart, super engaged, and really appreciative of the journey of like what LPR was and was not. And the same thing, we repeated a little bit at facial recognition before the acquisition. So yeah.
Well, I want to maybe let's close out with a traditional closing question on the podcast, which I like to shift it up a little bit and not always talk about just work and policing and the kind of stuff. So I've been asking people what the most fun they're having in their life is right now. So I'm having fun building multitude, running this pod, building my family, and doing that kind of thing. But like, what's going on in your world that's just fun?
I realized today driving up here, getting ready for this podcast, because this is the first time I ever put the man cave in the background.
Yeah, looks good, by the way. Looks good.
I don't devote as much time to the cars and wrenching and goofing around up
Yeah.
here as much as I want because I'm engaged with the family. So, when I got, Susan's my second marriage, and she knew I was a car enthusiast, and she kept telling me to buy a car, buy the car you want, get the car you want, start
Yeah.
accumulating the cars you want. And I just never did because I was like, it's never a good time because we've got things going on. We got and then we got the baby coming, and then that wasn't a good time. So the black car back there is a 2019 Scat Pack 392 Challenger that I
Nice.
bought. I took my 5-year-old son with me, and we ordered the car exactly the way we want it with every available option. He signed all the paperwork. We documented everything. I've saved all the paperwork. And I told him, my dream is that you show this car at a car show when you're 50 years old and say, this is the car I bought with my dad when I was 5.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so
That's badass.
So what's the most fun in my life? To answer that question, cars are definitely in it, but not nearly as much as I would like them to be. I still have the energy for the work that we're doing, Matt. So that takes up a lot of time. And then I'm just, I have two adult sons in the DC area, both military and police. One's a police officer and in the military. One's a defense contractor doing things that I don't know about because of his clearance and the things he's doing. And so just with them coming down, and we got a wedding planned in October. So our farm is turning in 10 years of projects turned into 1 year.
I think I told you last time my wife and I got married on her family farm, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah. So
so,
good luck. All I'll say is good luck.
yeah, my wife had a moment, Susan had a moment of weakness and said yes. But in reality, we're
It's
happy
gonna
to
be
do it.
fun.
And the foliage in Central Virginia on October 12th of 2025 will be gorgeous. Exactly. And that's my favorite time of the year by a lot.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, just family and a little bit of tinkering with cars. And I love work. I'm fully immersed in work because I want to be part of a team. I don't build anything, right? I want to be part of a team that builds great things and moves the needle.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Tommy Joyce, thanks for coming on the pod, man. You're the guy that everybody knows in this industry. So I think there'll be a lot of people that are excited to hear what you have to say.